I woke up to find myself kneeling at Xiaorong's feet. Everyone around me was laughing at me. In my previous life, I had tried to stop Xiaorong from getting engaged by throwing myself at the stone lion statue at his front door. I didn't die, but I was paralyzed for 7 years. During those 7 years, Xiaorong got married, had children, and rose to prominence. Meanwhile, I suffered unbearable pain from bed sores covering my entire body. This time around, I decided to spare Xiaorong and spare myself as well. Chapter 1. I was awakened by the sound of mocking laughter. Opening my eyes, I saw Xiaorong's official boots embroidered with claw patterns. Looking up, I saw his towering figure and his resolute jawline. He did not bend down or look at me. This scene was one I had experienced in my previous life. At that time, after begging him in vain, I lost my mind and charged toward the stone lion, colliding with it. What did I shout then? Xiaorong, don't regret this. In fact, Xiaorong never regretted it. It was I who regretted it. Over the past 7 years, I heard of his marriage, his children, his promotions, and I, alone in bed, enduring the stench of incontinence and the agony of bed sores, died in despair. Xiaorong didn't love me. Or rather, he loved himself and his career more. These truths took me 7 years of suffering to understand. Now, I let go of his clothes and stood up, laughing wildly. Miss Zhao, you're not planning to die here, are you? Even if you die, he won't marry you. Who would give up a noble lady to marry a merchant? Exactly. You should have known your place and stopped clinging to him. Bringing shame upon yourself. Yes. Bringing shame upon myself. Just as Xiaorong said. I was stubborn and foolish. I looked up at Xiaorong, and he was also looking at me. Our eyes met, and I smiled at him before taking a step forward. Xiaorong. I leaned in slightly and said to him, I hope you get what you want and truly find happiness. He froze for a moment, a look of surprise flitting across his face. I didn't want to think about his reaction, nor did I want to stay there. I brushed the dust off my knees and pushed through the crowd. Leaving the area, a murmur of astonishment rippled through the crowd. Why did she suddenly leave? Has Miss Zhao come to her senses? If she can come to her senses and stop clinging to Xiao, I'll kneel and eat the wall. I didn't stop. And under everyone's inquiring gaze, I returned home. 12 years ago, I passed by a dilapidated courtyard and encountered a frail boy. That year, the boy was only 6 years old. Curled up in the corner, skin and bones. The boy looked at me with his dark, piercing eyes, his stubborn gaze evoking sympathy. I begged my father to take him home with us. From that day on, Xiaorong moved into our home and became part of our family. 6 years ago, my father went out to collect payment for goods and was swept away by a landslide while crossing a mountain. His body was never found. My mother fell ill from grief and passed away 3 months later. At 13, I and 12-year-old Xiaorong were left to fend for ourselves. He was intelligent and excelled in his studies. His teacher often praised him, saying he was the reincarnation of the star of literature. Xiaorong did not disappoint us, becoming the youngest person in the dynasty to pass the imperial examinations 3 times in a row and be named the top scholar. On the day of his graduation, we embraced and wept, celebrating that we had finally made it through. Over the past 6 years, Xiaorong has focused on his studies, while I have dedicated myself to managing the winery my father left behind. I rose early and worked late, never getting a full night's sleep, with my hands and feet constantly cracked and bleeding, the pain piercing my bones. Every time I was in such agony, Xiaorong would hold me tightly and grit his teeth, saying, "No matter what it takes, I will make sure you live a life better than anyone else's." Now, we have finally made it through the tough times. Amidst the neighbors' congratulations, someone asked Xiaorong, "Are you and Zhao Dongjia getting married this year?" My face flushed, and I eagerly waited for Xiaorong's response. He didn't show the enthusiasm I had expected, but instead replied indifferently, "I've just entered the officialdom, there's no rush." I thought he was truly as he said, overwhelmed by the demands of officialdom and unable to focus on anything else. But then I heard that the Prime Minister had betrothed his daughter to him, and Xiaorong had agreed without hesitation. The marriage of a talented man and a beautiful woman became the talk of the capital. I couldn't believe it. As if struck by lightning. That night, he didn't come back. He only sent a letter, which read, "Allowing you to live a good life and marrying you are now contradictory. Sister, I'm so tired. I hope you understand." I refused to accept it and refused to give up. That day, I went to the government office to find him, but he wouldn't see me. I waited outside the house he had rented, but he avoided me and didn't even return home. For 3 months, I wandered like a lost soul, haunting every place where Xiaorong might appear. I became the laughingstock of the entire city. People spread ugly rumors about me, but I didn't care. I just wanted an answer. One day, Xiaorong finally agreed to see me. He stood there, holding an umbrella, his face expressionless. "I thought you were the only one who understood me in this world. Sister, the path to success is so difficult. I need someone to help me achieve my ambitions." I couldn't believe my ears. "What about me?" He lowered his eyelids. Standing in the fine rain, his voice distant as if separated by 1,000 mountains. "I'm tired of being poor and suffering. I want to be someone important. I want to trample those who bullied me under my feet." He raised his eyebrows. "Sister, don't stop me." He turned around, his back cold and lonely. I collapsed to the ground, almost hoarse from screaming. We had been together every day since we were 7. From the age of 13, we relied on each other for survival, becoming the only reason the other continued to live. I never thought we would part ways. So on the day he got engaged, I threw myself at the stone lion outside his new mansion. I did it, but he didn't regret it, while I lived every day in pain and regret. Fortunately, heaven took pity on me and gave me another chance. This time, I decided to let him go, to let him soar high and become the master of his own destiny. After months of being distraught, day and night, I had lost all semblance of humanity. I boiled water, bathed, and changed into clean clothes. I cooked a meal for myself, all dishes I loved. As I was enjoying my meal, footsteps echoed in the courtyard, and Xiaorong appeared at the door. We locked eyes, both surprised. "Back for something?" I asked him. "Nothing." Xiaorong sat down at the table and waited for a moment. Seeing that I didn't invite him to eat, he got his own bowl and chopsticks. I continued eating on my own. Cough cough. Xiaorong coughed, hurriedly pouring tea to rinse his mouth. "Why is it so spicy? When did you start eating spicy food?" I smirked. "I've always liked spicy food. I just didn't add chili because you don't eat it." Xiaorong paused in drinking his tea, raised his eyelids, and looked at me quietly. "Sister, I'm afraid something will happen to you. I hope you're okay." I took a sip of soup and smiled casually at him. "I'm doing fine. You're worrying too much." Xiaorong wanted to smile, but the smile didn't spread across his face, and he looked embarrassed and disappointed. I put the bowls and chopsticks away and went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Xiaorong stood outside the kitchen and spoke in a low voice. "Sister, forget about me. I believe you'll do well on your own." If this were another life, I would have made him think about the past 3,000 days we spent together. The little moments we shared, and not leave me alone to face this cold world. Besides him, I have no family left. But 7 years of paralysis have eroded all my illusions. Now, I just want to live freely. No one matters to me anymore. All right. I smiled at him indifferently. I wish you success and fulfillment of your dreams. Xiaorong tugged at the corner of his mouth, looking both stunned and struggling. After packing up and coming out, Xiaorong had already left, leaving behind a silver note for 3,000 taels on the table. Just like in my previous life, he had sent me enough silver to ensure I would never go hungry or cold. I had survived for 7 years on those 3,000 taels. In this life, I would still accept the 3,000 taels. He said it was to repay me for raising him, so I wouldn't hesitate to accept it. Let's call it even between us. After a comfortable night's sleep, I went to the winery the next day. I appeared before everyone looking refreshed and energetic, surprising everyone. Zhao Dongjia didn't stop Xiaorong from getting married. She looks just like she used to, and even more cheerful. She must be fine now. Who was it 2 days ago who swore that Zhao Dongjia would come to her senses and even kneel to eat a wall plaster? The 3 months I spent chasing Xiaorong and causing a stir came to an end quietly after I let go. I spent my days shuttling between the winery and home. My father's winemaking skills were passed down through the Zhao family. But he left too suddenly, and I never learned his techniques. Later, I studied the Zhao family winemaking methods he left behind and managed to master one type of wine. Over the years, I hadn't focused on it, instead devoting myself to taking care of Xiaorong and helping him fulfill his lifelong dream of passing the imperial exams. Now that I no longer cared about him, I took out the Zhao family winemaking techniques again and studied it carefully. I hoped that before I died, I could revive the once world-renowned Zhao family wine from the Luo River. Busy days passed quickly, and before I knew it, spring turned to autumn. The Zhao family winery launched its new product, bamboo leaf green. I set up a long tasting table on the street and invited people of all ages from the entire city to come and sample it. The bamboo leaf green had a delicate aroma and a sweet, refreshing taste, appealing to people of all ages. As a result, it quickly gained popularity, and we were overjoyed yet busy as bees, working non-stop. Just as we were celebrating, an order arrived at the winery. The eldest daughter of the Prime Minister's family is getting married, and they want 60 jars of bamboo leaf green to be delivered before the Mid-Autumn Festival. The eldest daughter of the Prime Minister's family is getting married, that means Xiaorong is getting married. In my previous life, he seemed to have gotten married before the Mid-Autumn Festival, and at the time, I thought he would come to tell me. But in reality, he never came. Under everyone's worried glances, I said casually, "Don't worry. We will definitely deliver the wine on time." Before the Mid-Autumn Festival, I personally led the men to deliver the 60 jars of wine. A servant led us through the side gate. When it came time to collect payment, a dignified and beautiful woman, surrounded by maidservants, approached us. "Are you Zhao Lanyu?" the woman asked me. "Yes." I nodded to her. "Zhao Lanyu of Zhao's wine house." The woman looked at me quietly for a moment, then suddenly ordered the old woman, "Give her an extra 500 taels." After giving the order, she glanced at me again, then swept her sleeves and left. The maids of the Kai mansion turned to look at me, giggling and teasing me with looks of contempt on their faces. "She's just a village woman. She's not even worth half a finger of a lady." "Ha. Master, what did she mean?" Zhuzi clenched his fists, his teeth grinding. "What's she so proud of? She just had better luck in her previous life." I folded the 500 taels of silver she had given me and let everyone out. She had better luck in her previous life. That's her talent. We can't help but feel resentful. Zhuzi wiped away tears in anger. I burst into laughter. amused by the sight of this towering man, nearly 8 feet tall and muscular, crying as if tears were free. After leaving, I donated the 500 taels to the Xian Hall. The wedding of Xiaorong and Kaiyuanyang was a grand affair, with a wedding carriage adorned in red and a procession stretching for miles. I didn't attend the ceremony because I was busy with the renovation of the new winery. The store had doubled in size, and there was even more work to do. Qingwan was worried I might be upset, so she stayed by my side all day. I'm fine. Don't just stand there. Get back to work. Qingwan cried angrily. Xiaorong is so cruel, changing his mind so easily. How could he forget that you endured the cold and took apart your own cotton coat to make him a thicker one? How could he forget that you... I covered Qingwan's mouth and tapped her forehead. You tell me to forget. Yet you keep reminding me. What do you want? Qingwan murmured, unable to speak. After working for several days, I was too tired to move and rested under the pomegranate tree in front of the house. This tree had grown from a seed that Xiaorong had accidentally dropped 7 years ago. 7 years had passed, yet the tree still only bloomed and never bore fruit. I dozed off, then suddenly woke up. I felt someone had been beside me, but when I looked around, there was nothing there. Strange, I muttered, walking to the door. The old gate was swaying slightly. Master! Qingwan ran over excitedly, telling me. A merchant from Qingzhou has come to order 1,000 jars of bamboo leaf green. You must go see him. 1,000 jars, enough to keep us busy for half a year. So for the next 6 months, the 4 of us moved to the distillery and worked tirelessly. During that time, I also perfected the recipe for Leobagan. Ah! Juicy inhaled deeply. This wine is truly refreshing. The following spring, when we delivered the wine to Jiangju, we also promoted Zhao's Leobagan in the northern regions. By mid-year, the Zhao family winery had gained a solid reputation. Everyone who saw me smiled and called me Mr. Zhao, begging for a taste of the wine. No one mentioned my foolish deeds from last year anymore, and I hadn't thought about Xiaorong in ages. He didn't even have to go on a field assignment. He was directly appointed as a court official in the capital and is now a high-ranking official of the 4th rank. Zhuzi said enviously. No wonder he wanted to climb the social ladder. He saved himself 30 years of hard work compared to other officials. One day, while delivering wine to the prince's mansion, I happened to see the grandson of Princess Huayang fall off the roof. I caught the child with my bare hands. Princess Huayang invited me to stay for dinner and smiled, asking if I was ready to marry. No. I just want to manage the winery properly. I have no other plans. Princess Huayang was very enthusiastic, saying she would find me a husband. I refused several times, but she wouldn't give up, and I dared not say more, fearing she would think me ungrateful. Come at noon tomorrow, I'll introduce someone to you. Over the next 7 years, I read every official bulletin countless times and heard every rumor circulating on the streets. So, I knew something about Princess Huayang's temperament. She wasn't a kind-hearted person. On the contrary, during the 7-year power struggle among the 3 princes, she had shown herself to be exceptionally ruthless. Such a Princess Huayang, who had saved her grandson, was now enthusiastically trying to arrange a marriage for me. I didn't believe it. My judgment might be a bit hasty, but I couldn't take the risk. The next day, while moving a wine jar, I slipped and it fell on my ankle, fracturing my left foot. What did she say? I asked Qingwan, who had gone to the prince's mansion to handle the matter for me. Qingwan whispered. She was very unhappy. The teacup was on the table, and it clattered, startling me. Princess Huayang's attitude made me even more certain of my judgment. And when I came out, I saw Jing Yongyi. Could the princess have introduced you to him? I frowned, thinking Qingwan's words were highly likely. Jing Yongyi, Though the third son of the Bo family was a notorious playboy, he had already lost 2 wives, and his eldest son was a year older than me. Such a man was certainly not a suitable match. A few days later, I heard the news that Jing Yongyi had married the princess's personal maid. I sighed in relief. I stopped going out to deliver wine and focused on managing the shop. In August, the owner of the neighboring restaurant fell ill and wanted to sell the shop and return to his hometown. I bought his shop. On the day we reopened, all 6 of us were so emotional we cried. In my previous life, after I became paralyzed, the 5 of them struggled to keep the shop afloat for 2 years before they had no choice but to part ways. On the day they left, the 5 of them cried by my bedside. At that time, I also regretted my decision, wondering why I had acted so impulsively and tried to take my own life, harming both myself and others. This life was different. We now had our own shop, a large and spacious one. Selling wine? Suddenly, a young man dressed in a blue bird robe appeared at the door. The blue bird robe was the official attire of the Imperial Guard, the feathered forest guards. Juzi went to greet him. What kind of wine does the official want? And how much? The man ordered 30 jars of old white wine and asked us to deliver them to the West Garden. Juzi took Inquan to deliver the wine, and I stood at the door, anxiously waiting. 2 hours passed, but they still hadn't returned. I leaned on my cane and went to the West Garden with Qingwan. Standing at the gate, Qingwan's legs were trembling. They're just brutal, they shouldn't kill innocent people. Besides, we're just common folk, they have no reason to make things difficult for us. The Imperial Guards are the Emperor's personal bodyguards, answering only to him. And the current Emperor is suspicious and temperamental. So the Imperial Guards, as his executioners, have become a feared presence. Were you the ones who delivered the wine this morning? The gatekeeper's face darkened. Wait here. After another 15 minutes, we were led inside and saw Juzi and Inquan hanging from the dragon gate, beaten to a pulp and barely clinging to life. My head buzzed, and I shouted, "What's going on? Why are you beating them?" There was poison in the wine. The man who had ordered the wine earlier stood before me with his hands behind his back. Are you the owner? You're just in time. Who ordered you to poison the wine? I shook my head. I was just following orders. I didn't know you'd come to buy wine today. Besides, you were there the whole time when we were moving the wine. The man pressed the knife against my neck, his expression fierce. Are you saying I'm framing you? Yes. I raised my neck. Or maybe it was someone from your own group who poisoned it. Either way, we wouldn't poison our own business. You're just being stubborn. The man took a few steps forward and suddenly raised his sword, aiming it at my abdomen. I shouted, "I'll investigate." I had just been given a second chance at life. I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. I'll investigate. I looked at him seriously. I'll give you an explanation and clear my name. The man sneered disdainfully. You investigate? Who do you think you are? Just then, I saw a man in a crimson official robe walking past the distant corridor. He wore a crimson official robe with a blue crane emblem on his chest. In the Western Garden, the only one who could wear a crimson official robe was Song Baichuan, the commander of the Imperial Guard. Lord Song. I steeled myself and shouted at Song Baichuan. Please, Lord Song, uphold justice. Song Baichuan was well known throughout the capital, rumored to be a cold-hearted executioner who killed without batting an eye. Calling him to uphold justice was even riskier. But I had no other choice. I had to prove my innocence and take Juzi and Inquan away. Song Baichuan stopped in his tracks and looked over at me. What are you shouting about? The man holding the sword roared, then turned back to Song Baichuan and explained. Sir, the wine they brought was poisoned. That's not true. I blurted out. We're just common folk trying to make a living. Even if you gave us 100 lives, we wouldn't dare poison your wine. There must be a misunderstanding. Please investigate. Sir. Song Baichuan strode over. When he came closer and I saw his features clearly, I couldn't help but marvel at how such a man with such exquisite features could exist in this world. Xiaorong was already very handsome, but Song Baichuan's features were far superior to his. My mind wavered slightly, but I gathered my thoughts and waited for him to speak. My heart was pounding with fear. Doing, did you do this? Song Baichuan nodded toward the dragon gate. Doing nodded. Song Baichuan didn't ask any more questions. His voice was deep, neither high nor low, and he exuded an intimidating aura without raising his voice. How do you plan to prove your innocence? He suddenly asked me. I breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that he was willing to help. I looked up at Doing and asked him, what kind of poison did you use? Did it kill anyone? He kept talking about poison, but he never explained what kind of poison it was. Laxatives. Doing explained to Song Baichuan. 7 brothers drank it at 7 p.m. and they all vomited and had diarrhea. I continued. If they were drinking, they should have eaten food. Why are you so sure there was something wrong with the wine? Doing dismissed the idea, saying the food was fine. In the end, Song Baichuan made the decision to inspect the 7 dishes. And they were all fine. The laxative was found in the teapot. If that's the case, get out of here. Doing ordered us to leave. I stood at the door, staring at Song Baichuan. I've heard that the West Garden handles cases fairly and never kills the innocent. Please give my 2 men justice. Song Baichuan looked at me, raised his eyebrows, and just as I was preparing for him to tell me to leave, he ordered Doing. Those who beat people will receive 30 strokes with a bamboo rod. Song Baichuan said expressionlessly. Take the injured to the clinic. The medical expenses will be charged to our account. As he finished speaking, Song Baichuan suddenly asked me, are you satisfied? I nodded. Satisfied. He had already handled the matter fairly, and I dared not ask for more. All right. Song Baichuan turned to leave but suddenly stopped and glared at Doing. You will also receive punishment. Double the punishment. With that, he left. I stood in the courtyard as the autumn wind swept in, and I couldn't help but shiver. Doing had someone take Zhu Zi and Yin Xiao to the clinic, left 200 taels for medical expenses, and left. I was so scared. Qing Wan wailed. The Western Garden is so terrifying. I collapsed onto a chair, my feet throbbing so badly I couldn't stand. But compared to the terror I had just experienced, it was nothing. Zhuzi and Yin Quan were recovering from their injuries, so I had to go out to deliver wine. As I moved around, I overheard some news. Xing Yongyi's newlywed wife had been tortured to the brink of death and had hanged herself. Xiao Rong had been promoted again, and Kai Yuan Yang was pregnant. Qing Wan was still shaken, saying that it was fortunate that I had broken my foot that day and avoided Xing Yongyi. If I had succumbed to Princess Huayang, I would have been the one thrown into the fire pit. That day, while I was loading wine onto a cart, a carriage passed by my door. The curtain was blown open by the wind, and I happened to catch the gaze of the person inside. I quickly lowered my eyes. The carriage stopped not far away, and Xiao Rong and Kai Yuan Yang got out. This location is quite nice, Kai Yuan Yang said, standing side by side with Xiao Rong. They looked well matched, but Xiao Rong had grown much thinner and no longer had the vibrant energy of before. Xiao Rong remained silent. Kai Yuan Yang smiled at him and said, now you can rest assured, she is doing well. Xiao Rong only glanced at me, saying it was cold outside, and told Kai Yuan Yang to return to the carriage. All right. Kai Yuan Yang handed me a silver note for 500 taels through the old woman. Sister, keep this. If you ever face any difficulties in the future, come find us. The old woman didn't hold the banknote tightly and it fell to the ground. Thank you for your kindness. I picked up the banknote and said, but we are currently able to make ends meet. So please don't worry about us. Kai Yuanyo seemed very satisfied. She smiled gracefully and walked away with her head held high. When they were far away, Qingwan cursed loudly. Let's donate the money to Xian Hall, I said. The next day after meeting Xiaorong and his wife, an unexpected guest came to the shop. Xing Yongyi sat at the counter, grinning and asking me to pour him some wine. If your foot hadn't been injured that day, we would have been married. I despised him, but I had to endure it. After all, running a business. People like him with power and influence could easily make life difficult for me. In the capital, without connections, it was hard to get by. I am a plain and unremarkable woman, I am not worthy of you. Xing Yongyi, however, began to harass me daily at the tavern, behaving in a reckless and frivolous manner. It must be Kai Yuanyang's doing. She knows about the previous arrangement between Princess Huayang and Xing Yongyi, and now she's sending him to harass you. Yesterday, I even saw her old servant watching the commotion across the street. When Xing Yongyi came again, I was busy reconciling the accounts. He suddenly grabbed my hand, pulled me toward him, and kissed me. Marry me. I will treat you better than Xiaodurin ever did. I struggled to restrain myself from smashing the abacus on his face. Instead, I smiled and poured him some wine, casually asking, Third Master, what can copper be used for? He had been grinning, but upon hearing my question, he immediately sobered up. What copper? Where did you see it? The other day when I delivered wine, I saw a boat on Qingying Lake with a lot of copper on it. I wiped the table and muttered. The ship was about to sink. Xing Yongyi's eyes darted around, and he stayed only for a moment before hurrying away. 2 days later, Xing Yongyi was arrested by the Imperial Guards. I didn't know if his arrest was related to the copper on the ship, but I knew that the copper was related to Xiaorong. If it was related to Xiaorong, it was related to Kai Shoufu. And if it was related to Kai Shoufu, it belonged to the second prince. I just didn't know why the Imperial Guards would get involved. Could the second prince be secretly minting coins? But what would he need so much money for? To raise an army? I felt a vague sense of unease. 2 days later, I was in the backyard trying out some new wine when a group of people strode in. The matter I had been worrying about for days had finally arrived. Zhao Dongjia. Song Baichuan walked in casually, stopping in front of the wine vat. He examined the wine while asking me, was it you who told Xing Yongyi about the copper in Qingying Lake? Should I tell him? But I didn't know how serious the charge of the copper was, and whether I would be implicated. But after a moment's hesitation, I whispered, yes, sir. It was I who told him. He was the commander of the Imperial Guard, nothing escaped his notice. It was better to admit the truth than to lie and risk being exposed. Perhaps it would leave a good impression of my honesty. Song Baichuan had been casually sniffing the wine, but now he stopped and looked at me, his phoenix-like eyes flashing with surprise. He probably didn't expect me to admit it so readily. Have you heard about how I harassed Xiaodurin and blocked his way for 3 months? Song Baichuan didn't respond, so he must have heard about it. A few days ago, I encountered Xiaodurin and his wife. The next day, Xing Yongyi suddenly came to harass me. I told him everything, starting from Princess Huayang. Though I am just a commoner, I also want to live and protect myself. Tell him that the copper on the ship was actually meant to give him something to do so he wouldn't bother me. I dared not say that I hoped Xing Yongyi would be suppressed by the second prince, leaving him no time to harm others. Or perhaps I also hoped that Xiaorong and his wife would learn a lesson from this. As for the rest, I know nothing. Song Baichuan seemed deep in thought and remained silent. I dared not look at him, keeping my head bowed in submission, waiting for his judgment. Song Baichuan believed my words and had me follow him to the Western Garden to sign and seal my testimony. It's all settled. You may go now, he said without looking up. Mr. Song, I asked cautiously. When will Jing Yongyi be released? Song Baichuan looked at me with a hint of surprise. Are you worried about him? I waved my hands. I'm afraid he'll seek revenge, so I want to prepare in advance. Song Baichuan curved his lips slightly and said casually, if you're afraid he'll seek revenge, why did you dare to set a trap for him? I muttered something, but he didn't hear me clearly and ordered me to repeat it. Actually, I didn't expect the Western Garden to get involved. If I had known, I definitely wouldn't have done it. I felt a bit ashamed. It's just that I'm inexperienced and acted rashly. He leaned back in his chair, his long fingers slightly curved, tapping the table lightly twice. My heart skipped a beat. Someone who dares to use others as tools to achieve their goals, I didn't see that in you. Where's the lack of experience? His tone carried a hint of mockery. My scalp prickled, and I quickly changed the subject. Do you like drinking, sir? Old Bygone or bamboo leaf green? If neither, we have other options. I couldn't see my own expression, but I knew I must look fawning. Just now, I suddenly thought that if I could curry favor with Song Baichuan, even if Xing Yongyi were released from prison, I wouldn't have to fear him anymore. After all, he not only commanded the Western Garden and was the emperor's confidant, but he was also the son of the Wei Kingdom's duke. Over the past 136 years of the Great Zhou dynasty, the Wei Kingdom's duke's mansion had produced 3 renowned generals. Its status and power were not something that ordinary meritorious families could compare to. Perhaps my intentions were too obvious. For Song Baichuan's expression grew stern, and he said nothing, staring at me until I felt uneasy. Are you afraid of me? He asked me. Your reputation precedes you. Of course I am a little. You're honest, he said with a smile, and his smile was so handsome that I was momentarily dazzled and stared blankly. By the time I came to my senses, he had already returned to his expressionless, aloof demeanor. I don't usually drink, but if there's some good food to accompany the wine, I can have a few cups. Song Baichuan replied. Was he willing to curry favor with me? I'm a good cook. Should I bring something over tonight? I couldn't contain my excitement and didn't bother to hide it. You're in such a hurry. Song Baichuan suddenly stood up and walked toward the door. I have something to do tonight. Let's do it tomorrow night. He took 7 or 8 steps before reminding me. I don't have any food restrictions, but I do like spicy food. Yes. 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 I followed him, responding. Song Baichuan walked ahead with his hands behind his back. For some reason, I felt that he was in a good mood at that moment. The next morning, I began preparing the dishes to accompany the wine. Though they were called side dishes, they were actually quite elaborate, especially for someone like him, a young master from a distinguished family who had been raised on fine foods. He could tell the quality of something with just one taste. Therefore, the dishes couldn't be too meat-heavy or too vegetarian, nor should they be too elaborate. They needed to look simple on the surface but require a lot of time and effort to prepare. They had to be low-key and elegant to show my sincerity. So I made Yunying noodles with 16 ingredients, meat floss with several kinds of meat, and chestnuts that were charcoal grilled to perfection, then stewed in broth and baked. 5 dishes, taking the entire day to prepare. When they were served, Song Baichuan was surprised. He pointed at the noodles. Yunying noodles? I nodded. You've put a lot of thought into this. He ate slowly, and I stood beside him with the wine jug, waiting to pour him more. But he finished all the dishes without touching a drop of wine. He put down his chopsticks, his gaze falling on my wine. Thank you, Mr. Zhao. However, I have business to attend to today and should not drink. I said it was no problem. But he looked at the table full of dishes. Since these are just side dishes, there's no need to be so elaborate. I continued to smile flatteringly. I was afraid you wouldn't be used to it, so I put in some effort. It wasn't troublesome. He leaned back in his chair, looking at me leisurely. If you plan to send me food every day, do you intend to stay in the kitchen from morning till night? I was speechless, as that was definitely impossible. He was amused by my expression, tugged at the corner of his mouth, and stood up. I was just about to go out. Shall I give you a ride? I quickly cleared the dishes and followed him. He walked at a leisurely pace, with me trailing behind, while the other Imperial guards from the Western Garden followed at a respectful distance. The group was highly conspicuous, drawing stares from everyone on the street. I suddenly realized that Song Baichuan had intentionally escorted me back. By the time we finished the walk, everyone would know that I had a good relationship with Song Baichuan. Who would dare to bully me now? Thinking this, my steps grew lighter. Song Baichuan suddenly turned to look at me for no apparent reason. I startled, quickly composed myself, and followed him obediently. The next day, when I brought him food again, I prepared several dishes I was truly skilled at. He said he liked spicy food, so I added some chili peppers. He seemed to really like it, finishing all 4 dishes and even clearing his plate of rice. Unfortunately, he still didn't drink any wine. Sir, a guard rushed in, saw me, and stopped mid-sentence. Song Baichuan grabbed his sword and rushed out the door, instructing me, wait for me for 2 hours. I hurriedly agreed. He left, and I tidied up the table, sat down by it, and began to look around his room. His room was large but empty. The front part served as a study and office, while the back was partitioned off by 8 screens, which seemed to hide a bed. Does he sleep here? The Wei Kingdom's mansion is so close, doesn't he go home to sleep? As my gaze swept across the room, I suddenly noticed a sewing basket under the bookshelf. Inside was a long robe. I picked up the garment and saw that the sleeve had been torn open, with a needle and thread still attached. However, the stitches were very clumsy. I put the robe back in place just as he returned. As he entered, a strong smell of blood followed him, and his front and hem were splattered with bloodstains. He glanced at me, then followed my gaze to his own clothes, furrowing his brows before leaving without a word. A moment later, he returned, having bathed and changed. I breathed a sigh of relief. I'll have someone send you back, he said, pausing for a moment. There's no need to bring food anymore. I wanted to ask why, but his expression was too stern, so I held back. Sir. I pointed to his sewing basket. Do you need me to sew it for you? He raised his eyebrows. Aren't you afraid? No. It's just blood. I dared to say. Sir, you can also let me wash the clothes you stained. His expression seemed a bit awkward. I wondered if I had been too forward earlier and was about to explain, but he suddenly handed me the sewing basket. Thank you for your trouble. It's no trouble at all. It's my honor to serve you, sir. I sat across from him and focused on sewing his clothes. I had no other skills, so I cherished every task he assigned me. As long as I was useful, he would look upon me with favor. Thus, my support became even more secure. The room was quiet, but outside it grew noisy. His subordinates would occasionally peek in, then push and shove each other, laughing as they ran off. I also heard 2 people crouching by the window, whispering to each other. Does the master like Zhao Dong's family? I don't think so. The master is heartless and indifferent. How could he like someone else? You never know. Haven't you heard of one thing conquers another? The two whispered to each other. I pretended not to hear. But the room was so quiet that I heard every word clearly. But Song Baichuan showed no reaction. So I didn't say anything either. I didn't care what others were saying. After all, as an unmarried woman, coming to flatter Song Baichuan every day, it was only natural for them to speculate. But none of that mattered. In life, one shouldn't ask for too much. As long as one gets what one desires, that's enough. As for what one loses because of it, there's no need to be too demanding. I still brought Song Baichuan his dinner, but he hadn't been around for several days. And when I asked around, no one knew where he had gone or when he would return. 2 more days passed, and the first snow of the year fell in Yunjing. The 5 of us gathered around the stove to keep warm, and Juzi returned after delivering the goods. He squatted by the stove and excitedly said, "Master, Song Baichuan is in such a terrible state." "What do you mean? Was he injured?" "I just went to the Marquis's mansion in Liuzhou to deliver wine and heard 2 old women talking about the Duke of Wei's mansion. Although the Duke of Wei's mansion was a wealthy and prestigious family, it was very chaotic inside. The old duke had married 3 wives, and Song Baichuan was the eldest son, but his mother died after giving birth to him. The old duke mourned his first wife for 27 days before remarrying. His new wife gave birth to 2 sons, but she also passed away 5 years later. Half a year after that, the old duke married his 3rd wife. How many children does the old duke have in total?" Qingwan asked. 6 sons and 7 daughters. Juzi exclaimed. There are also several concubines in the household. Listening to Juzi talk about the Wei Kingdom's mansion, I suddenly understood why Song Baichuan lived in the Western Garden instead of returning home. Why he mended his own clothes when they were torn. And why, despite being the eldest son, he wasn't the crown prince. To prevent him from becoming the crown prince, the duke's wife resorted to underhanded tactics. When he was around 11 or 12, she sent maids into his room, and later spread rumors that he was too young to behave properly and lacked moral character. Song Baichuan's success today is entirely due to his own efforts. Sigh. I said, peeling a chestnut. Everyone has their own hardships. Until the end of the year, I didn't see Song Baichuan, nor did I see Jing Yongyi. I heard he was still locked up in the Western Garden, and his family couldn't do anything about it. I had a vague feeling that Song Baichuan didn't want to let him out. After all, Jing Yongyi was highly likely to seek revenge on me. However, perhaps I was overthinking it. Our relationship wasn't that close. By the end of the year, I had opened wineries in Baoding, Dangzhou, and Kaifeng. Of the 17 wines listed in the Zhao family's wine recipe book, I had already mastered 13. The once-renowned Zhao family wine had once again returned to the tables of wine connoisseurs. I'm heading to Dangzhou tomorrow. I bid farewell to everyone and set off for Dangzhou the next day. The coachman told me that several princes in the imperial court were engaged in fierce power struggles recently, and it was rumored that the 2nd prince had been assassinated. I was startled. At this stage in my previous life, the situation shouldn't have been this intense yet. Should it? Even when the 2nd prince emerged victorious, it didn't feel like a bloodbath. Perhaps it was because I was an outsider and knew too little. The shop in Dangzhou wasn't large, but business was brisk. The 2 cartloads of wine I brought arrived just in time to fulfill the outstanding orders. That evening, while discussing future plans with the shopkeeper and the clerks, we suddenly heard a loud bang. Startled, we rushed out into the courtyard to find someone throwing bricks and torches into the yard. The bricks shattered the wine jars, and the flames rose half a person high as soon as the fire hit the ground. Who's there? I grabbed the iron fork by the door and charged out. In the alley, Several people were holding torches and lurking around. Seeing that I was a woman, they didn't seem afraid and grinned at me as they approached. We were 6 against 3 and beat them up. But we lost over a dozen wine jars. After that, people harassed the winery every day. It's the people from the Su family winery. They think we're stealing their business. The shopkeeper said, "Master, the local thugs aren't easy to deal with. Let's just endure it." Endure what? I won't endure it. If they want to use underhanded tactics, I can too. That night, I threw stones and torches at his winery. The next day, the Su family came to confront me, demanding to know if I had thrown the torches. If you have evidence, sue me. If you don't, deal with the consequences. I said coldly at the door, if you want to keep this up, we'll all go down together. I planted the iron fork in the doorway. I wasn't afraid of anyone. The Su family members suggested we sit down and talk. I know the types and prices of the wine you sell. I compared the two families' wines. Your wines are mainly cheap, but they're all strong spirits. I said, this is what I'll do, I'll remove my family's old white wine and strong spirits from the market and focus on selling milder tasting wines. How about that? The Su family agreed. The commotion subsided. Everyone praised me for being so bold at such a young age. I couldn't help but laugh and cry. How could I not be afraid? I just had nowhere to hide. When you have no safe haven, you have no choice but to charge forward. Whether it's a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, you can't stop. Actually, when I set the fire that day, I thought of Xiaorong. Remember that time when someone else bullied our shop? Xiaorong soaked himself in chicken blood in the middle of the night, wielding a knife at the door of that family's house, scaring them all out in a panic. After that, that family never dared to cause trouble again. I still remember what Xiaorong told me, don't be afraid. From now on, leave such matters to me. Now that he's gone, I realize I can handle things just fine on my own. That night, we had a meal together. Everyone had had a few drinks. After sending off the shopkeeper and the clerks, I was about to close the shop when someone suddenly blocked the door. I froze, then looked up and saw his face. I was stunned. Song Baichuan? Song Baichuan was injured. And badly. He had a knife wound in his abdomen and an arrow wound in his back. He wouldn't let me call a doctor. I'll show you how to remove the arrow. Don't be afraid. All right. I asked him, do you want a bowl of wine? It won't hurt as much. No. Just do it. I followed his instructions to remove the arrow, and he didn't utter a sound throughout the process. But I was so scared I was drenched in cold sweat. After removing the arrow, Song Baichuan said, I'll rest for a while. Wake me when it's dawn. Then fell into a deep sleep. He started running a fever in the middle of the night. So I wiped his body with hot wine and stayed by his side all night. The next day. Sir, you're awake. Have some porridge. Song Baichuan drank a bowl of porridge and looked much better. I wanted to ask him why he was injured, but then I thought it wasn't my place to ask. The matters he was handling weren't something I should know about. How did you know I was here? I wrung out a damp cloth and wiped his face. Yesterday, I heard that the female owner of a wine shop had a fight with someone. Song Baichuan spoke casually, but his eyes sparkled with a smile. I thought to myself, such a feisty woman must be you. I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. Now I've got a reputation that makes people afraid of me. That's good. He chuckled. Song Baichuan asked me to buy him some clean clothes. You're covered in the smell of alcohol. He came out looking a bit uncomfortable. You had a fever in the second half of the night, so I used some rice wine to wipe your body. I explained, afraid he might think I was being disrespectful. I didn't look closely. After saying that, I regretted speaking too quickly. The explanation only made things more awkward. Sure enough. Song Baichuan paused for a moment, then shook his head with a smile. Zhao Dongjia is no ordinary woman, it was I who overthought things. He left quickly. I waited 2 days but didn't see him return. So I packed my things and headed back to the capital. To my surprise, I encountered him halfway there. He was riding a horse. His posture straight and composed, and no one could tell that he was still recovering from severe injuries. What a coincidence. Sir. I was delighted to see him. Indeed. He nodded slightly. Would you like to rest in the carriage? I lifted the curtain. You can ride the horse, I know how to ride. Song Baichuan's brothers heard this and exchanged knowing glances. But I pretended not to notice. Get lost! Song Baichuan turned around and shouted at them. His brothers shouted. Sir. You were walking too slowly just now. You nearly killed us with worry. We really need to hurry now. I was a bit surprised. Song Baichuan got into the carriage, and I hurriedly asked about his injuries. He handed me some medicine, and his face finally showed signs of fatigue. Please help me change the bandage. The carriage was cramped, and I knelt behind him. When I lifted the bandage, I couldn't help but gasp. Though it had been several days since he was injured, his wounds hadn't healed at all, they had actually worsened. You're really pushing yourself too hard. Sir. I sighed. Life is short, and no matter how great your ambitions are, you need your health to live it. Song Baichuan remained silent. No matter what you do, you should always love yourself first. Only by loving yourself can you love others. These were lessons I had learned the hard way after 7 years of suffering. He still didn't speak, and I thought he was angry. I called out, Sir? And leaned forward to look at him from the front. But our eyes met, and we both froze. My face quickly grew hot. Just moments ago, I had been proud of myself for living 2 lifetimes and acting more cautiously. But now I had fallen back into my old ways, acting impulsively without thinking. He looked at me and smiled. Zhao Dongjia. I heard your advice. I felt embarrassed and forced a smile, then turned away from him to continue applying the medicine. That evening, Song Baichuan didn't meet up with his brothers but stayed at the inn with me. The innkeeper smiled and said, The young master and the lady arrived just in time. There's still one heavenly room left. I'll open it for the 2 of you. No. Open 2 rooms. I hurriedly explained. The heavenly room is for the young master. Though I didn't look at Song Baichuan, I felt he was smiling. He didn't explain either. Just leaned casually against the counter, lost in thought. I glanced at him, and he happened to look over, actually laughing out loud. Don't laugh. I glared at him, and he suppressed his laughter, turning away. The clerk's eyes darted around, and he smiled. No problem. No problem. There are 2 more Tianzi-numbered rooms. I'll open them for the 2 of you right away. You 2 are from out of town. It's still early, so you can go into the city to see the Lantern Festival. Our Lantern Festival won't be dismantled until after the 1st month of the lunar calendar. No need. Before I could finish, Song Baichuan said, Thank you. We'll go after we eat. I looked at him in surprise. He raised his eyebrows. The Lantern Festival here is very famous, and there are also many local wines to taste. I suddenly felt excited. But after we arrived at the Lantern Festival, we found there were no wine stalls. Song Baichuan casually explained. Oh, they've probably been taken down. I had no words. Want to release river lanterns? Song Baichuan asked me. I shook my head. Never mind. Just wandering around is fine. But in the end, I went with him to release the lanterns. I didn't know what he had written on his lantern, but I casually wrote, May Song Baichuan be safe and healthy. And may all his wishes come true. You have to be thorough when trying to curry favor with someone. What did you write? He asked me. I quickly copied it down and pushed the lantern forward. He chuckled and said something I didn't catch. The next morning, I got up early, borrowed the kitchen, and made him a medicinal porridge. It wasn't that I was particularly thoughtful or considerate, it was mainly because it was rare for us to spend time together. And I needed to make the most of the opportunity to curry favor with him. Sir, are you awake? He responded with a grunt. I pushed open the door, placed the porridge on the table, and noticed a river lantern. I gasped. But before I could ask, he had already placed the lantern in his luggage. That lantern? I asked him. He sat down expressionlessly and said coldly, You must leave today. I need to hurry back to the capital. I dared not ask again. Oh, take care of yourself. But that lantern, it looked so familiar. After returning to the capital, the weather gradually warmed up. A few days later, Kai Yuan Yang gave birth. On the day the child was a month old, the Shao mansion held a banquet. Kai Yuan Yang sent me an invitation, but I pretended not to see it, not wanting to go and make a fool of myself. I heard that the Shao mansion was crowded with guests, and the courtyard was as bustling as a marketplace. I couldn't help but recall the 6 months after my parents passed away. Our home and the winery were in disarray. We had no money and no one to rely on, often going hungry. We would often sneak into the graveyard to steal offerings from others. We were often chased and even beaten. Xiao Rong shielded me with his body, letting their feet land on him. Xiao Rong, you must have gotten what you wanted. You must be very happy now. What are you talking about? Song Baichuan had appeared at the counter without me noticing. I startled, then smiled. Sir, do you have time today? Have you had dinner yet? He shook his head. Then shall we eat here? I asked him. All right. He found a chair and sat down. Looking at me. Will you cook? I grabbed my purse, untied my apron, and said, I'll cook. I'll go buy the ingredients. Please sit down and wait for me. He agreed. I took a few steps, then ran back. Sir, how about braised beef for dinner tonight? He stared at me intently, so seriously that he didn't respond for a moment. Sir? I waved my hand in front of his face. He snapped back to reality and nodded. Anything is fine. Qingwan helped me in the kitchen, and in the evening I made 8 dishes and a soup. Song Baichuan sat down, but everyone else stood around watching him eat. If you're all going to stand there, then I'll leave, he said. We all sat down, feeling a little awkward at first. But Song Baichuan asked for a glass of wine, and after everyone had 2 glasses, the atmosphere loosened up. The 6 of us chatted away, talking about trivial matters. When buying meat, you should buy from Aunt Lu. Her pork is tender, Qingwan said. There's a difference in pork? Song Baichuan sipped his wine and asked with a smile. Qingwan nodded and didn't forget to clink glasses with Song Baichuan. You're like a celestial being, you wouldn't understand these things. This meat? The difference is huge. Seeing that Song Baichuan was willing to listen, I didn't stop them. I propped up my cheeks and listened happily. All 6 of us were drunk. When Song Baichuan left, we staggered to the door to see him off. I don't remember what I said, but one scene is crystal clear. I was holding onto Song Baichuan's hand tightly. It seemed like we had reached an emotional part, and I even cried. Because when we woke up the next morning, all 6 of our eyes were swollen. What did I say last night? I pressed a cold compress to my eyes, my mind a blank. I know. Juzi swallowed his tea. Master. You said that, mister. Song had it so hard. That without a mother. He had no home. You even told him to let you know if he ever wanted to eat anything. And to come here to eat. Ah. I remember now. Shuangwen added. You also said that from now on we're all family. No need to distinguish between us. Yin Xiao gave me a thumbs up. Master. Your skill in flattering people is getting more refined by the day. I collapsed into the chair. Feeling so embarrassed I wanted to die. How could Song Baichuan be pitiful? The one who's truly pitiful is me. I guess all our efforts will be in vain. I sighed. Our patron must be furious. Over the next half-month, my suspicions were confirmed. Song Baichuan didn't come to the shop. And when I went to the West Garden, I couldn't find him either. It seemed like he was avoiding me. I couldn't keep going after him. So I could only hope that he'd gotten drunk that day and didn't remember anything. Or maybe he didn't want to bother with a fool like me. What a waste of 2 lifetimes. I sighed. Before I knew it, summer arrived. And that day, a major incident occurred. At the imperial banquet, the emperor ate some watermelon and suddenly vomited, collapsing straight to the ground. Soon after, word spread that the emperor was on his deathbed. Is the world about to change? My heart skipped a beat. In my previous life, the 3 princes had fought for 7 years until I died. And the second prince was finally named heir. Has it happened earlier this time? I couldn't remember anything different. Though I had been reborn, my existence had no impact on the greater scheme of things. Why was it different this time? No matter how much I speculated, no one told me the answer. And I couldn't find out either. The Western Gardens seemed busier than usual, with people in bluebird robes rushing out of the city. And sometimes even the sound of galloping horses could be heard in the middle of the night. But I hadn't seen Song Baichuan once. The noble families who used to come every few days to order wine had all gone silent this month. Everything seemed to have come to a standstill, like the moment before an avalanche. I told everyone to leave the capital and find places to take refuge. I bought enough rice and flour for myself and stayed at the winery. That night, I was too hot to sleep. While cooling off in the courtyard, I suddenly heard the clanging of swords in the distance. I jumped to my feet, climbed over the wall, and looked north. In the distance, I saw flickering flames. The light grew brighter, and thick smoke billowed into the sky. The avalanche had arrived. Unlike in my previous life, I had no idea which prince would emerge victorious. I wondered what Song Baichuan would do without the emperor. Would he choose to follow a prince? And would he be able to maintain his power? Anxious, I paced back and forth in the courtyard. The next day, I dared not open the door, listening through it to the sounds of battle on the street. The night was long, and the day was unbearable. Whether there was light or not made no difference to me, for I could see nothing. 2 days passed in this manner. That night was unusually oppressively hot. As the hour of the dog approached, a chaotic clatter of footsteps echoed from the street outside my door. I pressed my ear against the door and heard voices. All the troops of the Imperial Guard are at the West Gate. At the East Gate, only Song Baichuan is reliable. The prince said to launch a full-scale attack on the East Gate at midnight. Do you think the 3rd prince is really dead? He must be dead, the man said, pausing for a moment. Once the 2nd prince ascends the throne, we'll go drink and feast. Didn't Minister Xiao say that everyone would be rewarded with 100 taels of silver? I froze. The battle between the 3 princes had ended, and now the victors were attacking the palace. But Song Baichuan was guarding the East Gate alone? He couldn't hold it. I had to do something. I turned to look at the piles of burning knives stacked in the warehouse. Burning knives are highly flammable and ignite upon contact with fire. I took 500 small jars, filled them with burning knives, and tied 2 jars together with sturdy hemp rope. I loaded the jars onto a cart and sealed it tightly. I pressed myself against the wall to listen to the commotion outside. After some time, the chaos erupted again, followed by someone shouting, "Everyone listen up! The third prince is conscripting you all. You must report to the street within 15 minutes. Anyone who disobeys will be executed without mercy." The third prince? So he wasn't dead. But he had no men left to use. So he had to start conscripting civilians as human shields to help him fight the second prince. We couldn't go out. Once we stepped onto the street, we'd become cannon fodder. Human shields, none of us would survive. They were a group of stragglers, with few men left. And they couldn't hold much ground. They were probably just controlling this area. I opened the door and glanced out onto the street, where I encountered a neighbor across the way. I went over to them and told their entire family, "Don't go out onto the street. Once the fighting starts, we'll all be used as shields. Bring out the wine from my shop and prepare fire starters to hold in your hands." We quickly notified everyone we could through the alleys. Everyone took the wine and stood at their own doorways. They're few in number, and the second prince's men are likely to discover them. So, we just need to delay them until those who come to kill them arrive. I didn't care who won, I only cared about surviving. I wanted to live. The person shouting had gone through half the street once. And sure enough, they returned. Now we could clearly see that there were only 14 of them from start to finish. But they were all armed with knives. Their clothes torn and stained with blood. They were a group of desperate fools making their last desperate stand. I clenched the 2 jars of wine in my hands, signaled to the people beside me, and made hand signals to those across from us. Almost simultaneously, everyone standing at the door of the house threw the wine they were holding at the group. This was unexpected for them, and they all froze for a moment. In that instant, others rushed out from the houses with torches they had prepared and threw them onto the wine. The flames erupted. "Smash!" I shouted, and everyone threw all the wine at them. Some hit the people, some hit the horses, and some landed on the ground. The flames instantly engulfed them. Horses neighed and people screamed. The scene was chaotic, and we were so scared that we ran back into the house and locked the door. After a moment, we heard more footsteps outside. I knew that the second prince's men had arrived. I let out a long breath and collapsed onto the ground. The neighbors wiped away their tears as well. "Thank goodness, Mr. Zhao came up with this plan. Otherwise, we would have been used as shields." An old woman cried. The 2 sides were locked in battle, caring only about victory or defeat, heedless of the lives of the civilians caught in the middle. The commotion outside had subsided, and I hurried back to the shop. There was still wine at home, and I needed to continue dividing it up for emergencies. As I pushed open the door, I saw a dark figure in the courtyard. I froze and called out, "Sir? Zhao Lan Yu." Song Baichuan hurried over, looked me up and down, then said indifferently, "As long as you're safe." I was very worried. It's so chaotic outside. How did you manage to get out of the palace? There were people from the second prince everywhere. Song Baichuan must have faced great danger on his way here. "It's fine. I took a back alley." He brushed it off. "You did well earlier. You truly live up to the name of Zhao Dongjia." I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. Then I remembered what I had overheard earlier. I heard that the second prince started attacking the east gate at midnight. I know. I'll head back right away. I had been panicking and scared, but seeing him and hearing his words, I calmed down too. "Lock the door and don't go out. Everything will be fine tomorrow." He stood before me, silently staring at me. The clear moonlight cast his weary face clearly into my eyes, and I obediently replied, "All right. I understand." He pushed the door open and left. I placed my hand over my heart. Sitting in the courtyard, my mind felt like it had been covered in dough. Chaotic and disoriented. and I didn't even know what I was thinking. Hiding in the empty storeroom. I didn't know when I had fallen asleep. When I woke up again, the sky was clear and calm outside. If it weren't for the deliberately washed-out streets and the bloodstains splattered on the doorframe, I would have thought that everything that had happened before was just a fantasy. A few days later, the emperor issued an edict, appointing the fifth prince as the crown prince. I was both surprised and not surprised. The 5 princes fought over the crown, and the fishermen reaped the benefits. The 5th prince emerged as the ultimate winner. The most cunning was the emperor himself. By feigning illness, he tested the loyalty of his 3 sons and a group of rebels. Said Mr. Wang, the storyteller. The struggle between the clam and the heron benefits the fisherman? Juicy had just learned the phrase, and here it came in handy. I glared at him, and Juicy sheepishly shut up. It's okay. We're just discussing among ourselves, it won't get out. Mr. Wang said. The 2nd prince is dead, and Kai Shofu and the others have been sent to the censorate. Mr. Wang said this, glancing at me. Is Zhao Dongjia asking about Xiaodarin? He asked me meaningfully. I nodded. Xiaodarin is not involved. Not only that, but he has been promoted. I couldn't believe it. If that were the case, wouldn't it mean that Xiaorong wasn't actually part of the 2nd prince's faction? How could that be? He and his father-in-law were on the same side, weren't they? I was completely confused. Things were completely different from my previous life. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was back in my previous life, paralyzed in bed. I was always alone in the room, but I could always feel someone outside the window. I asked who was there, but no one ever answered. I woke up from the dream and saw a figure outside the window. Who's there? Who's outside? I asked. Sister. It's me. Xiaorong called out to me through the window. I pushed open the window and looked at him in surprise. How did you come here? Is something wrong? He had lost a lot of weight, and his once elegant and luxurious robes now hung loosely on his frame. Ill-fitting. Sister, he said, his eyes red and his voice choked with emotion, just as it had been 2 years ago when he left me. Can I come in? I have something to tell you. I poured him some tea, and he looked at the teacup, seeming a bit surprised. Sister, I'd like some black tea. We don't have any. I've never liked black tea, and I haven't bought any since you left. He had never liked green tea and only drank black tea since he was a child. If there was no black tea at home, he would only drink plain water. I hadn't forgotten his habits, but I hadn't followed his wishes. He looked at me, hesitating to speak, yet seeming a bit wronged. I pretended not to notice. Speak. What brings you here? He said. Kaidashi and my father were close classmates. That year, their mentor had only one recommendation spot for the imperial exams. Kaidashi killed my father to take that spot. He thought he did it without anyone noticing, but I saw it. As he spoke, his hands clenched the teacup, trembling slightly. I came to the capital to find him and take revenge. After finishing, he looked at me. Sister, I never abandoned you, nor did I ever want to marry anyone else. You are the only person I care about in this world. But revenge is my obsession. I must make him die, and die at the hands of someone he trusts most. Sister, can I move back? He looked at me, his face pleading. My heart was torn apart, and tears streamed down my face. Without thinking, I slapped him across the face. When he said he was going to marry someone else, I never thought of hitting him, I only wanted to hurt myself. But now, I wanted to hit him until he was dead. You can tell me, I cried. Do you think I'll betray you? Or do you think I'll drag you down? No. I don't want to drag you down. He knelt before me, grabbing my hands. I'm afraid if I fail, I'll drag you down too. If you can forgive me, hit me. Hit me hard. Just forgive me. Sister. My chest felt like it had been struck by a heavy blow. Dull and painful. But I couldn't utter a single word. I pointed at the door and after a long time, I said, "Get out!" I couldn't forgive him. And I couldn't forgive myself. The me from my previous life was so foolish. Utterly foolish. Xiaorong didn't leave, he knelt outside my door. I couldn't sleep either. The memories of 10 years of companionship flashed before my eyes as if they were yesterday. But the despair and pain of every day after I was paralyzed in my previous life were also vividly etched in my mind. I fell ill with a high fever. I only knew that someone was feeding me water by the bedside and that many people were talking. I kept dreaming. In my dreams, I saw myself with a sprained ankle, and Xiaorong was carrying me on his back. I saw him teaching me to read. I saw him taking a scorching hot steamed bun from his chest and presenting it to me as if it were a treasure. I woke up from my dream to find Xiaorong sitting by my bedside. His lips were cracked, and his eyes were bloodshot, looking like a walking corpse. "Sister," he called out hoarsely, tears falling from his eyes. "It doesn't matter if you don't forgive me. As long as you're alive and safe." He knelt by my bedside, holding my hand. I was wrong. If I could do it all over again, I would tell you everything. No matter what happens, I will face it all with you. Sister, don't die. Please. I stroked his head like I did when we were children. Sister, I won't die. And I don't hate you anymore. Arong. Let go of the past and live a good life. I pinched his cheeks. We'll both live well in our own lives. He buried his face in my palm, crying uncontrollably. All right. He choked out. I'll listen to you. Sister. I'll listen to you. Xiaorong left the room. There was someone outside, and he said to him, "From now on, I'm entrusting my sister to you. Please take good care of her." The man didn't say anything. I looked at the door, and Song Baichuan walked in, holding a bowl. He came over and spoke in the same calm tone. "Do you want some water?" "Yes." I bit my lip. "You shouldn't have to do this. Let Qingwan do it." He didn't say anything, just helped me up to drink the water, then placed a pillow behind me and blew on the hot porridge slowly. "Is it too hot?" he asked me. I shook my head. "Then eat more. You need to eat to have strength." I obediently finished the porridge. He took the bowl out, then came back a moment later with a basin of warm water, wrung out a hot towel, and wiped my face and hands before laying me back down. "Sleep a little longer?" he asked. I said yes, closing my eyes. I noticed he hadn't left but was sitting quietly by the bed. Curious about what he was doing, I quietly opened my eyes to look at him. To my surprise, he was reading a medical book. "Are you going to study medicine, sir?" I asked him. "The doctor said your body is weak, so I asked him for a book on medicinal diets," he said, flipping through the pages casually, then looking up at me. "Don't you want to sleep?" My heart was pounding, and I had no desire to sleep. "Then I'll sleep for a while. You go ahead, sir. I'll do as I please, just like I'm at home." He flipped another page and suddenly asked me, "We're out of oil and salt. Do you have any left?" I nodded. "In the fourth cabinet in the kitchen." "Got it. I'll go look for it after I finish washing the clothes." "Sir? Nothing. I'm going to sleep." Song Baichuan put down the book, suddenly bent down close to me, and looked at me with a smile in his eyes. "The pomegranate tree in your yard has borne fruit. It's growing well. My heart pounded. He was so serious. Yet he said such a thing. I couldn't help but laugh. Then couldn't help but feel happy. You'll have something delicious to eat. I laughed. I've always been lucky. He suddenly took my hand but didn't look at me, instead holding the book with one hand and staring at it. But after a long time, he hadn't turned a single page. Song by Chuan, the side story. I have no memories of my mother. From the moment I was born, I lived in the back courtyard with my wet nurse. The back courtyard was where the servants lived. They dared not disobey the current mistress. So no one dared to associate with me. I didn't care, because my wet nurse said that as long as I had enough ability, I could trample those who looked down on me under my feet. She also said that they were all ants, not worth my fear. I found this reasonable, so I cared even less. Everything would pass. Indeed, everything did pass. I became the commander of the Imperial Guard, though my reputation was tarnished and I never received the title of prince. Yet those who saw me still dared not act lightly. My life was both turbulent and calm. Whether killing or being killed, I was prepared for both. Until one day in the Western Garden, I heard a clear voice calling my name. Stubborn to the point of recklessness. That woman was intriguing. Her feet were swollen so badly they had burst through her shoes. Yet she walked steadily the entire time. Though her fingertips trembled with fear, she maintained her composure in speech and action. This reminded me of myself. When I was 7 or 8, I was the same. My father wrongly accused me, and I followed him for 3 days, begging him to listen to my explanation. Even when he punished me, it didn't work. Later, I thought of myself back then as naive and stubborn like a bull. But it was also pitiful. I never thought our paths would cross again. But she actually had the guts to set a trap for Xingyongi. That ship's copper belonged to the second prince. I had known it all along and was waiting to make my move. I never expected to catch Xingyongi instead. When I confronted her, I thought she would deny it. But she was clever and admitted it readily, even explaining the reason. Out of respect for her honesty and since it wasn't a major matter, I didn't press the issue. But then she dared to openly try to curry favor with me, asking if I liked drinking and offering to bring me food. She was really reckless. How could I eat food from a stranger? But she cooked very well. Much better than the wet nurse. If I wasn't busy, I'd wait for her to come in the evenings. I'd eat while she waited nearby. But we didn't talk. Yet the atmosphere was surprisingly pleasant. She also sewed clothes for me, and her craftsmanship was quite good. I've been wearing them ever since. But unfortunately, I was very busy and didn't think of her for a long time. Until that incident. While in Dangzhou, I heard that the female owner of a winery had gotten into a fight with someone. And I immediately thought of her. So after I was injured, I went to find her. With her there, I felt inexplicably at ease and slept soundly. The next morning, she calmly told me she had wiped my body with rice wine. I felt a bit shy, but she was so calm that I felt like a naive youngster. On the way back, I waited for her, and sure enough, I saw her. She invited me to share the carriage, and I gladly agreed. Riding in a carriage was indeed more comfortable than riding a horse. When staying at the inn, the clerk mentioned a single room, but she hurriedly explained, which I found amusing, and she even glared at me. He paused, a look of surprise flitting across his face. In the evening, we went to release river lanterns. I asked her what she had wished for, but she seemed nervous and quickly pushed the lantern away with water. I was curious, so I had my men catch it and bring it to me. I looked at the 16 characters on the lantern and couldn't sleep all night. I didn't quite understand this emotion, but it felt itchy and uncontrollable. The uncontrollable feeling grew stronger, so I went out of my way to find her. She was delighted to invite me to stay for dinner and asked if I wanted braised beef. She and her staff had a few drinks and chatted loudly all night. But it was lively. It felt like home. From childhood to adulthood, I had never been part of such a lively gathering. It turned out that being in such a place felt like this, warm and comforting. When I left, Zhao Lanyu actually grabbed my hand and said she felt sorry for me, that I had such a hard childhood, and that if I ever wanted to eat something delicious, I should tell her. I really wanted to see her reaction when she sobered up and realized what she had said. It must have been interesting. That night, the remnants of the third prince's followers came out to cause trouble. I heard where they were and knew her shop was there. The winery was her life, she would never leave it. Reason told me I shouldn't leave the palace. But I did anyway. Seeing she was safe, I finally felt at ease. But she was so brave, she even led the neighbors to kill those remnants and save themselves. I helped her secure a reward from the emperor and asked him to write a large plaque for her. After everything was settled, I went to find her. Since she wasn't at the winery, I went to her home. The door was open, and after hesitating for a moment, I went inside. I overheard her conversation with Xiao Rong. I knew about their relationship. They had been together for 10 years, with deep feelings and strong bonds. But this had nothing to do with me. I liked her, and she didn't know yet. I had to tell her and let her make a choice in front of me. She made her choice, calling out my name in her dream. Xiao Rong heard it too, and she looked pitiful. But she didn't deserve sympathy. When she woke up, her eyes sparkled when she looked at me. She liked me too. Actually, I should have known all along. After all, in that river lantern, she had already expressed her feelings for me. Xiao Rong told me to be good to her. Does he even need to remind me? Given his way of handling things, he has no right to remind me. I love Zhao Lanyu. I've made up my mind about her. Of course I'll treat her well, with all my heart, for the rest of my life. And